I often notice that the fight that the LGBT community has and what they've gone through is often kind of lumped into minority and or black issues. Do you guys feel like they are the same or similar? And or do they need different, like, should they just be in different conversations?
I would say they are similar, but not the same.
Tell me.
Because I think you can pick apart, for example, this, maybe a white queer male doesn't have the same struggles as a lesbian black woman.
That's a good point.
So while both of them do have issues, they are not the same because of race. Right?
Do you feel like race is it can sometimes overpower, or not overpower, but overshadow that? And I guess my question would be, if you were to describe yourself, would you say, and perhaps this is a better question for you, would you say I'm a black man or black person that is a part of the LGBTQIA community, or would you swap them? Like what
leads the identity?
What defines your identity?
I would probably say I would go with race first. Because I am straight, so I wouldn't necessarily say I am a straight black and Latina female. I would just say
but that's because that's what's normal, like norm in society.
Like to say it like that?
Yeah, because you don't have to tell anybody that you're straight.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think everybody would just assume.
People, I guess like people would assume unless told.
Right.
So yeah, therefore I would lead with, I guess, race.
Yeah. I've never really, outside of AMDA, I've never really been asked, maybe by a few people, but.
Like about your sexuality?
Yeah. But I feel like I wanted to ask this question in this space because I just noticed that it typically becomes, if we talk about race, other factors, kind of get lumped in together. And I don't know if that's disrespectful to different fights. Does that make sense? Because It's like, well, it's not all the same. And I don't think that a general conversation benefits the specific needs and desires of different communities.
Yeah.
I don't think that if you answer if you answer a problem that the black community has, it doesn't automatically answer a problem that the LGBTQ community has. But their issues are often just kind of like, oh, well, put together.
I think they are lumped together because we as people of color and then the LGBTQ community are both maybe ostracized communities, if I could say that. Whereas we both have that like, what's the word I'm looking for? We don't, we're similar in the same that we don't have like maybe all the rights and the first picks at stuff.
Yeah.
But yes, it's not the same thing.
Does that bother anybody?
Bother? No. Like in the way of that we're not the same or that we are or
No, that it's like to give you an example. Mm-hmm. After the George Floyd incident, we have the Black Lives Matter kind of campaign.
Yeah.
You know, everybody was out. And I'm not 100% sure because I'm not, you know, a part of the community. Perhaps something had happened and I just am not aware of it. But the slogan was added on, you know, like Black Trans Lives Matters. So I was a little bit confused as to where it came from. Now, I did ask around because I just wanted to receive more information.
yeah.
And I believe that it may have been a month where it was just kind of honoring.
Trans lives.
Yeah, and like just kind of passing off information, you know, about the trials and tribulations that one, you know, community goes through and ones of another. So I just wanted to see if the answers were similar for one community as they would be for another. Because I know that if I had one specific problem, if I have back pain, which I do, I don't think that I would take the same drug for if I had nausea.
Yeah.
You know, two things that are, you know, that need assistance, but I don't know if they have the same answers. So I don't know if you feel like lumping things that are similar would lead to productive solutions or effective solutions, I'd rather say.
I think it would be, to use your analogy, like what hurts worse in the moment. Does your back hurt worse or is it your nausea? You know? Which is kind of like the whole thing behind like the Black Lives Matter thing, right? Like a lot of people are like, well, all lives matter, you know, like
Right.
brown people, we have a struggle too. Yeah. Yes, we do. But at the moment, this is where we're at.
Well, that means that we're now separating the issues. So is that what we're doing?
Separating the issues from like other cultures.
No, because if it's Black Lives Matter, which is what the topic of, you know, today is, would we need to just kind of have a separate slogan or separate organization to effectively get results for each community?
I mean, we could. I don't feel like there would be anything wrong with that. You know, I think it's, if that's what it takes to see change for those people that need the help or whatever, then sure. You know, I think
I think that as someone who lives at that intersectionality where, you know, as a queer person of color, I think the histories are different, but the fight should be the same. As far as like your analogy, like, yes, my back hurts and yes, I'm nauseous, but the overall diagnosis is that I need medicine. And I think that there, to compare George Floyd or Breonna Taylor to Pulse.
Tell me, Pulse is Orlando?
Yes.
Okay.
I think to compare the two incidents is doing a disservice to either group, because the bottom line of it is discrimination and systemic pain. That's, you know,
I didn't even think about it like that.
I think, you know, gay marriage, same-sex marriage was just legalized, 4 years ago. The act of lynching was literally just declared a hate crime. So I think to kind of, there's also probably a topic for a different conversation where there's homophobia in the African American community. I've faced racism, I've faced homophobia, and sometimes at the same time. So I think I understand where the anger comes from, where, you know, the fight for Black Lives Matter is not the fight for LGBTQIA plus. But as someone who is affected by both causes and both fights, I think that to tell me that this part of me matters more than this part, just because one affects the color of my skin and the other is part of my identity, and is not helpful to the conversation. And I think if we're going to fight, let's fight. But don't tell me to put my sword down and hold up my shield, because it doesn't help the fight.
Now, my question is for you. Do you feel like, so let's say the current fight in America as a Black person, someone would say, is largely the dealing with police. And in my opinion, it would be on a larger scale, the legal system, where there is the idea that police can do X, Y, and Z without facing A, B, and C. So to me, I think that that's a bigger issue than police brutality, only because you could tell a child to not eat candy as much as you'd like, but if you don't punish them ever, then, you know, it means nothing. You know, so do you think that as far as just the messaging goes, effectively, they may be two wars, but are they effectively being won together? Not to say not to not fight for it, but just because there is kind of like a break in the Black community itself, you know, dealing with homosexuality in the Black community, and I feel like there's a rift there that, you know, slows things down just a little bit. And then just kind of mixing them together, I feel like there is a way for each party to get to their final goal and destination in a clean fight faster if they were slightly more separate.
I don't think separation and compartmentalizing people's identity really helps anyone. I think because if the fight is just for Black Lives Matter, but the forefront of that is cisgendered straight Black men, you leave behind Black women, you leave behind queer African Americans, you leave behind Black trans lives. And I think I posted that, just like that phrase, Black trans lives matter, and radio silence. But I think if we can separate Black Lives Matter from All Lives Matter, then I think Black trans lives matter needs to be in that equation. And
as a separate thing?
No.
Oh,
okay. I think Black Lives Matter needs to include Black trans lives. And the fact that there is no national knowledge of the Black trans people that are being murdered
by the hand of
anyone.
Okay, got it.
If they're dying, and they're dying. You know what I mean?
Got it.
I think that's where the problem becomes, well, equality, but not really. You know what I mean?
I understand what you're saying. I think my questioning is more about these specific aspects of the quote unquote fight. You know, if it's police reform, jail reform, you know, reformation of laws and things like that, in these very specific cases where we see police versus black, does not black encompass everyone who is in these communities, which would be LGBTQIA plus? Or does it make sense to compartmentalize it because they are being left out of these very specific fights? Or is that even an issue within the community, which would be the people versus the organization, or the people versus the law enforcement?
What's the question? I'm so sorry.
I would say I'm asking if because the quote unquote fight is so specific, which would be the lives of black people getting taken away by law enforcement and not receiving justice for that, and the fight that the LGBTQ community is going. Are they similar? Are they the same? Is that something that people in that community are facing, or can they not fall into the all-encompassing slogan Black Lives Matter?
I guess that comes down to a question of, do all Black lives matter?
Sure.
Do we fight as hard for Black queer lives? And I don't as a Black queer life, I don't know.
But I'm asking if that is something within the community that we, the people who are not within it, is that a fight that you guys are going through? The people versus the organization. I think that's my question. Because I'm a little bit unaware, and I want to gain some knowledge on the subject, but I just don't know enough about why certain compartmentalization has happened. Does that make sense?
It does, but I mean, I guess why then in that regard, why isn't it just stop police brutality? You know what I mean? And that, I feel like in that broader sense, that would also negate the use of the movement Black Lives Matter, but it shouldn't. You know what I mean? Everyone wants to stop police brutality,
Right.
but Black Lives Matter is the cusp of that. And I think even within that, then you get Black trans lives and Black and queer people of color. So I don't have a problem with the compartmentalizing those movements, because I think those words also need to be said. Because if that was the case, we would just, all the hashtags would just be stop police brutality.
Right.
But that is the big picture, but that's not the issue at hand. The issue at hand is Black Lives Matter.
Yes. So all Black lives.
Sure.
Okay. So I think my main question is I am unaware of the fight. Is there a police versus LGBT community fight? Is that a war that's happening and I'm just not sure?
I don't know, but I guess, are you questioning why these are being brought up? Is that what you're saying?
I think I'm questioning the time in which it was brought up. And I feel like Black Lives Matter was a response, is a response to situations that have happened, right? So like George Floyd happens, normally, naturally, we see the Black Lives Matter campaign and rallies and marching and all of this. Now, after that, I saw Black Trans Lives Matter, and I was wondering, did something else, is this a response to something, or like I'm just out of the loop? So I wasn't sure if it was a response.
You're just not being made aware of the lives that are being lost.
Right.
Okay. And they are at the hands of police?
Not always, no.
Okay, got
A
it.
lot of them are sometimes specifically hate crimes.
Got it. So it was just kind of honoring the lives of people who were affected by hate crimes.
Yes.
But there was no like large case in that moment that made everybody start saying about that?
Correct.
Okay, got it. Okay. I was looking for that because I was a little confused, to be honest with you. So I think information is good to know, just because, when you start seeing these things, you're not 100% sure what's happened. And when you're not in certain communities, you don't get a lot of information. You don't know a
which
lot.
I think is a part of the problem.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was good to know. I wanted to ask. Serious stuff.